Thank you for joining us on This Week in Turkey. I am Murat, Türsan. Tonight, the social media and press regulation bill is on hold. The government is asking for increases to the budget as inflation takes its toll. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman pays a visit to President Erdogan, and we will have Ankara Institute Research Director Osman Sert to break it down. Additionally, in domestic news, Turkey is battling the flames again, and there is national outrage as the perpetrator of a brutal murder gets only 14 years in prison. But our first story tonight, the ruling government's social media regulation bill, dubbed the Censorship Bill, is on hold. A bill crafted by the ruling coalition of AKP and MHP was expected to pass this week, but it looks like there is a break in the party, the first time in a really long time. Now, as a reminder, President Erdogan's party, AKP, along with its coalition partner, MHP, holds 55% of the parliament, so they have a supermajority. Passing bills is really up to the coalition's discretion, and it is usually done swiftly and without any roadblocks. But this delay marks the first break in the party since the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq, where the party was split in allowing the U.S. to launch operations from Turkish soil. So it looks like even the drafters of the bill are hesitant to pass it. No wonder, as the bill is likened to setting up a ministry of truth promising to dole out prison time for sharing fake news on social media. But no news on who is to decide the validity of the content. And journalists in Turkey are rightfully alarmed. A multitude of journalist associations gathered in the capital this week to voice their dissent, and the president of the Turkish Journalist Associations had a few strong words for the bill.
The new social media and disinformation regulation bill, drafted by AKP and MHP, was expected to hit the floor of the parliament this week, but the voting is currently being postponed. CHP MP Engin Özkaç announced that the bill was in hiatus to be negotiated further before passing, due to the lawmakers from the AKP objecting to the bill, signaling the first breaks in the party in over a decade. The opponents of the bill argue that the bill looks to curb press freedom. Under the new bill, distribution of false information is a felony, which, in addition to prison time, can strip a journalist of their credentials. In addition, the law requires popular social media companies to register in Turkey. Failure to do so could result in the government limiting bandwidth to the websites by up to 90%. Multiple Turkish journalism associations gathered in front of the famed Ulus Atatürk statue in Ankara this week to protest the bill dubbed the Disinformation Censorship Bill.
Basın kanunu ama içinde gazeteciliği geliştirmek için hiçbir amaç yok. Hapis cezası, kapatma, internet basınına ağır denetleme ve basın kartlarının iptali var. Sanmayın ki bizler dezenformasyonu önemsemiyoruz. Ancak bunun yolu yasadaki gibi hapis cezalarından geçmez. Yasada yazılı basının kapısına kilit vuracak maddeler var. Bu yasa temel insan haklarına, haberleşme özgürlüğüne, basın özgürlüğüne aykırıdır. Yani anayasaya aykırıdır. Yaşasın özgürlük, yaşasın demokrasi, kahrolsun, kahrolsun, kahrolsun sansür.
And in the economy, the lira is stable this week, relatively speaking. Of course, that is to say that it hasn't lost a significant portion of its value in days' time, but has only slowly degraded penny by penny. The lira took its heaviest hit of the month on the 6th, when President Erdogan announced that he had no intentions of deviating from his unorthodox economic policies, and that the central bank would continue to reduce interest rates, though the central bank announced yesterday that it would keep interest rates stable at 14%, which was a relief to many, as reducing interest rates while dealing with an embattled currency and one of the highest inflation numbers in the world is the last thing you'd want to do. Under orthodox economic theory, that is. Speaking of inflation, it continues to rip through the country. In the beginning of the year, Turks were elated as President Erdogan gleefully announced that the minimum wage was getting a near 50% raise in an effort to relieve some of the economic pressure felt throughout the nation. But those gains are already lost 6 months into the year, leaving people asking, when will we get another pay raise? And it's not only the people asking. The parliament just requested an 880 billion lira additional budget, as the budget is already scraping the bottom of the barrel halfway into the year. The proposal wasn't without controversy, of course, as it also includes a 20% pay raise for the president. Let's go to the details.
Economic turmoil continues to worsen in Turkey as the lira continues to slowly lose its value against the dollar. Since this time last year, trading at 8.6 to a dollar, the lira has lost almost 50% of its value in 12 months. Many breathed a sigh of relief yesterday when the central bank announced that it would keep the interest rate steady at 14%. Speculation was again rampant last week when President Erdogan once again reiterated that Turkey would continue to cut interest rates, threatening to plunge the lira even further down. As inflation continues to rise consistently, the near 50% hike to minimum wage seems like pennies 6 months into the year. Last Thursday, after a meeting with President Erdogan, the president of the Turkish Trade Unions Confederation, Ergun Atalay, had announced that he was expecting the minimum wage to be increased next month. A major impact for the working class in Turkey, as an estimated half of the workforce earns minimum wage. The middle class is not the only ones hit hard, however. The parliament proposed an 880 billion lira additional budget bill on Monday, as the government's budget is already running dry halfway into the year. The budget bill was not without controversy, however, as the proposal also includes a 20% raise for President Erdogan, making his monthly earnings 141,000 liras a month. Meanwhile, the government statistical agency released the consumer confidence numbers this week. According to the TSI, consumer confidence stands at 63.4% this month, the lowest it has been since 2004. Consumer confidence above 100 points is considered positive, while below 100 points is considered concerning. Finally, to revitalize the fledgling real estate market, the nation's banking regulator, BDDK, announced yesterday that the prospective homeowners could finance a purchase at up to 90% of its value, so long as the total value is below 2 million liras. Between a value of 3 to 5 million, buyers can still take out a mortgage for up to 70%. All this adds to the ongoing rental crisis in Turkey, with rent in some parts of Turkey up as much as 300%.
In our main story tonight, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto ruler of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, paid a reciprocal visit to President Erdogan in Ankara this week, and the mood of the meet was described as, quote, brotherly. Just a little background on the matter. Turkey and Saudi Arabia used to be allies until they were not. Saudi Arabia and Turkey had maintained a friendly diplomatic relationship until the eruption of the Arab Spring in 2010, which threatened to upset the balances of power throughout the Middle East. Turkey and Saudi Arabia found themselves on the opposite side of this equation, of course, as Turkey's ruling party AKP backed the Muslim Brotherhood at first, thinking that it could have an ideological ally taking power in Egypt upon the revolution. Now, of course, this did not sit very well with Saudi Arabia, as the kingdom considers the Muslim Brotherhood to be a terrorist organization. But it is thought that it has more to do with the Muslim Brotherhood posing a threat to Saudi Arabia's absolute monocratic system, as it espouses democratic ideals. And the relations between the two states did not improve when 8 Saudi nationals murdered Washington Post journalist and vocal Saudi Arabia critic Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. Sound recordings of the gruesome murder were leaked to the Turkish press soon after, leading many to conclude that Turkish intelligence had bugged the embassy. President Erdogan made a big show of wanting to prosecute the perpetrators in Turkey, and was not shy about calling it a heinous violation of international laws and norms. Well, all of that was until recently, because Turkey finally closed the Jamal Khashoggi case last April, and weeks after, President Erdogan finally got that visit to Riyadh he was hoping for. And now, amidst Turkey's economic woes, speculation is running rampant that a visit from the head of a wealthy oil-rich state could signal Erdogan's way out of the monetary hole the nation is in, as a potential swap agreement has been on the docket for some time now. But there is no telling if that would actually be Turkey's lifeline. We will have Ankara Institute Research Director Osman Sert to make sense of it all in just a little bit, but let's go to the details first.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited Ankara this week. the first time since the murder of US-based Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul back in 2018. President Erdogan held an official ceremony in the presidential palace for the Saudi prince. The two leaders held talks for roughly 2 hours. In a written statement to the press, it was emphasized that the talks were held in a sincere and brotherly atmosphere and continued. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Crown Prince bin Salman's official talks reflected the great relationship between the two nations, which is sincere and brotherly. Turkish and Saudi relations had been nearly non-existent since the beginning of the last decade. When the Arab Spring erupted throughout the Middle East in 2010, Turkey and Saudi Arabia had found themselves in opposite corners with Turkey's support for the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization which the Saudi government considers a terrorist threat. Since the end of last year, Turkey had been making attempts at reconciling with all of the states in the region it had fallen out with over the last decade. Having re-established tentative relationships with Israel and the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Egypt were considered the last holdouts. The last meeting between Erdogan and Crown Prince bin Salman was back in April, where President Erdogan visited Riyadh. It was rumored that President Erdogan had been trying to pull the meeting together for months. An unnamed Saudi official speaking to The Guardian had said, "He needs us more than we need him, and he's the one traveling to us. This stance of his has cost him billions in lost revenue. Any trade will be on our terms."
Joining me now, Ankara Institute Research Director Osman Sert. Mr. Sert, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Murat.
So, Mr. Sert, the regional politics around Turkey have been shifting for quite some time now. Famously, the last decade was certainly a decade of turmoil for Gulf and Arab states, as well as for Turkey. Now, Turkey, previously an antagonist in the region, has turned its sights at making peace, historically making attempts at restarting diplomatic relations with Israel, UAE, and alike. Egypt so far is a holdout, but Saudi Arabia was the last major holdout President Erdogan had been trying to get an audience with. Now, he has finally gotten that second state visit. What does this mean for Turkey and Saudi Arabia in a geopolitical context?
Thank you. First of all, when we are talking about the foreign visits and diplomatic relations, generally we intend to look at what's happened during the last 24 hours or maybe at most during the last 1 month. But it is not the case. If you look at why President Erdogan tried to normalize, quote unquote, its relations with, the adversaries or the other countries with whom he has some problems with, it's because of President Biden's elections at the American election. And after Trump left the office, the system, the geopolitical map in the region changed. And accordingly, not only Turkey, but the other countries were in need to normalize relations with the other, and including the United Arab Emirates, for instance. The normalization of the relations with the United Arab Emirates was just much more rational basis. If you look at how the handling of the diplomatic normalization process, first of all, some intelligence officers are coming and going, and some special representative from the United Arab Emirates were just visiting Ankara and meeting with President Erdogan. And then some gestures, some PR relations happened to normalize the relations and for the public to grasp the normalization much more easily. Some sympathetic songs in favor of President Erdogan, whatever. But it was much more, normalization. But with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it was not the case. First of all, the main reason was much more different than the United Arab Emirates, which was, the Khashoggi murder. It was an horrendous murder happened in Istanbul. A journalist, a prominent journalist, it doesn't matter if they are not prominent, a murder can happen. But a well-known figure was beheaded, put in pieces, and just put into an acid. And even we couldn't have found his corpse. It was an unbelievable thing. And Turkey just increased the tension to very utmost limits. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe if Turkey's energy won't be enough to bring the end of the story, maybe Turkey shouldn't have increased the tension until this point. But they did it. And the Turkey included CIA, United Nations, and even if, President Erdogan even just pointed out that MBS was the main figure behind the murder. And it created a big chaos. But now, what is so striking for Turkey is that without receiving anything, like United Arab Emirates or some like Israel, without any kind of usual diplomatic procedures, a cool endorsement of unconditional endorsement of MBS was shown by President Erdogan. And I think it is a very symbolic thing. Why? It is symbolic. It is just signaling then the end of the Arab Spring era for the Turkish public thinking. Because at the Arab Spring, Turkey was staying at one edge, supporting the Arab masses. They were at the streets, just chanting in favor of their dignity, whatever you call it. And there was another autocratic regimes over there. And Mohammed bin Salman and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was representing the regimes, and Turkey was backing the masses on the streets. Now, the visit happened this week in Ankara is signaling and symbolizing that Turkey accepted the defeat, and it was the victor of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on Arab Spring.
I see. And Mr. Sert, let's expand on the Jamal Khashoggi murder and its public backlash. Now, previously, the Saudi consulate was home to many demonstrations demanding justice for Jamal Khashoggi's murder. But our correspondent, Emine Bıçakçı, was in front of the consulate on, on Wednesday, on the day of the visit, and it was remarkably calm this time around. President Erdogan was famously adamant about bringing those responsible for the murder to justice, and suffice to say, he had the public's backing. But why do you think it's all quiet on the Western Front now?
First of all, we shouldn't observe all the, the sentiments and the reactions, resentments with our eyes. The Turkish public generally, they can be, the resentment, I think, so high in the public. And it is not valid only for the secularists, which are generally traditionally against any kind of, Saudi Arabian related event, or, the pictures or their dresses, whatever you go. But for the conservatives and even for the Erdogan supporters, it was a shame because the strong, charismatic leader was, endorsing a leader that he himself pointed out as a murderer. And I think it is creating a very great resentment. But it doesn't mean that everybody should go to the streets and just make demonstrations. But the Turkish public generally just keep its own decision until the ballots. For instance, if you look at the issue, just forget about what happened to late Kasikci. But regarding the economy, do you see, a big masses on the streets because of the high rise at the oil prices? Or, the very difficult conditions the people are trying to cope with? No, it is not. Because it is a culture of, I think, how to react to something. And that's why it doesn't mean that if nobody is at the streets or in front of the Istanbul consulate of Saudi Arabia, it doesn't mean that everybody is accepting this and they're happy with what's happening. And I don't think so.
I see, sir. And while we're on the subject of the economy, you brought that up. Let's hit this note. Now, Turkey is going through a very difficult time, economically speaking. And when you hear the de facto head of an oil-rich state come to Turkey, one automatically assumes that it has to do with an influx of much-needed cash, or at least we would like to think so. Now, as we covered earlier, Turkey is experiencing mass turmoil. Now, can bin Salman's visit and this normalization process signal a lifeline for Turkey? Do you think Erdogan can dig his way out of this economic hole? Your thoughts? Yes,
and no. Yes, in this way, the Gulf countries are lifting the embargo to Turkish products, and it is so important. Just I have met with some, the producers and some sectors. They have very good and strong relations with Saudi Arabia, and there are so many Turkish producers are selling their goods to the Saudi markets. And it was cut down because of this Kasikci debacle. And at the end of the day, it was a very big burden on Turkish economy. This is the yes part. Probably the embargo is being lifted and the Turkish companies will start to sell their products to Saudi and the Arab market, but it is not enough. And if we try to remember what happened before the United Arab Emirates leader, Mohammed bin Zayed, visited Turkey, I remember very well, even a $50 billion American dollars investment to Turkey. There were such kind of rumors. It is a huge number. Of course, it was not rational, any kind of who any person who is familiar with the numbers, with the money, with budget, and understand what $50 billion means. It was not rational, but it was pumping a hope to Turkish economy and the Turkish company. And what happened at the end of the day? Almost nothing. Yes, there's a swap deal with the United Arab Emirates. It brought some, psychological effect, but at the end of the day, it was not enough because the hole is too huge at the Turkish economy, and to close it, such kind of deals are not enough to close it, to cure the problem at the Turkish economy, and that's why yes, it will have an effect, but a very limited effect. But at the end of the day, not only the Saudi, the money or the others will be enough to solve the economic crisis at the Turkish economy, and especially, the central banks stocks. And I don't think it will be enough. And we should accept that it is not so easy. It's not something like that. Just you are just putting a button at your, central bank, and suddenly they are sending the money to Turkey. It's not so. Okay, you need to make some swap deals, and even if you want to invest in the country, it takes months and sometimes years. And if we look at the timetable approaching the elections, and even today, billions of dollars come to Turkey, and it will be injected into the Turkish economy. Its effect for the voting behavior, it will take time, and that's why the final reply to your question is no, it won't be enough for the Turkish economy and President Erdogan as safe line.
I see. I think we all kind of gathered, but just did not want to hear those words. But Mr. Sert, thank you for breaking it down, and thank you for being able to join us tonight. It was an absolute pleasure.
And my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And in domestic news, Turkey is engulfed in flames again this week, which seems to happen every year now. Last year, Turkey, along with Italy, Greece, and the Balkans, saw catastrophic fires amidst the horrific heat wave between July and August. And with the latest fires, it is sparking fears that they may be starting again. Marmaris district in Turkey's southern Muğla province has seen multiple wildfires starting Tuesday, and the authorities are still trying to get them under control. Last time, there were a myriad of theories regarding the cause of the fires, notably people blaming ambiguous and nefarious arsonists with political motivations. It also wasn't a great look on Turkey's part, as the government appeared short-handed when it came to firefighting aircraft. Images of derelict firefighting aircraft, very famously standing still on runways, did cause quite a public backlash. The Minister of Interior, Süleyman Soylu, however, assures the public that they are well equipped to handle the fires this time around. And he also, again, cites arson, but it appears that this time it may indeed be. Reportedly, a suspect was arrested mere hours ago in connection with the fires, and reporting so far indicates that he has taken responsibility. We will keep you updated as the story develops, but let's go to what we have so far.
Turkey is engulfed in flames again this year as forest fires rage in the Muğla province's Marmaris district. Marmaris Mayor Mehmet explained that the attempts to control the fires are ongoing, but the flames are still burning at 4 key points. Muğla Metropolitan Municipality published a report on the latest situation stating, "The fire is not under control yet and is advancing toward a solid waste processing facility in the Yeşilbelde district." According to unofficial figures, approximately 3,091 hectares, roughly 4,300 football fields, have been damaged thus far. The fires have been raging since Tuesday with no signs of stopping. However, the Ministry of Interior, Süleyman Soylu, had a more positive outlook. Soylu said, "Right now, I can tell you we are doing very well. We have 12 planes and 45 helicopters on the job, totaling 57. We have 253 firefighting vehicles. 247 people have been evacuated. We have not asked for international assistance." The minister also went on to say that he suspected arson. We have evidence and a suspect for how the fire started. The men are on it. We will share the information with the public soon. Hours ago, an unnamed suspect was arrested and has reportedly admitted to the arson. Suspect, only identified as SA, stated that he started the fires due to an inter-family feud, saying his father sold his property and he started the fires by putting out cigarettes in 3 different points on the property in an attempt at revenge.
Our final story tonight is one of tragedy. Pınar Gültekin's murderer, Cemal Metin Avcı, will serve 14 years in prison after admitting to the brutal murder of his love interest. The case was finalized this week, where Avcı was sentenced to 23 years, but will only serve 14 years behind bars, as the court rules that the perpetrator was provoked by the victim. Pınar Gültekin, a 27-year-old Muğla woman, was strangled, burned, dismembered, her body encased in concrete, and discarded in a river inside a barrel by Avcı. While the prosecutor demanded the maximum penalty, aggravated life in prison, Avcı will be released by age 46. Reportedly, the defense has successfully argued that the victim provoked the perpetrator. Avcı had argued that Gültekin had found out about the fact that he was married, threatened to inform Avcı's wife, and extorted him for money, and on the day of the murder threatened him with a knife, wounding him, prompting him to kill her. However, Gültekin's lawyer has argued several times that no evidence of extortion or the victim assaulting Avcı has been presented, and that the prosecution has filed a motion to request a new judge 3 separate times, all 3 having been denied. And additionally, the medical examiner's report shows no wounds on the felon, and no messages of extortion between the victim and the perpetrator has emerged thus far, though the case has already been adjudicated. This, of course, is more than just a murder in Turkey. Femicide in Turkey is a grave and serious matter. According to the NGO We Will Stop Femicide's platform's 2022 report, so far, 35 femicides and 16 suspicious deaths have taken place in Turkey in this year alone. And with that, that's it for us on This Week in Turkey. I have Murat Türsan. A special thanks to Mehmet Tanrıverdi for news text and Kathleen Phelps for voiceovers. And thank you for joining us.